Mesdames et messieurs,
The greatest festival of our contemporary society, the Olympic Games, is about to begin.
This is gonna be close.
Oh! They're all completely gassed! They've given it everything on the global bucket! Oh, yeah! Go! Oh!
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. But that is an Olympic championship.
Ready.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. Each week we share stories from athletes and people behind the scenes to help you have more fun watching the games. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm here. We're doing a show. Yay.
That's right. And we're going to see each other this weekend.
This is very exciting. Yes. So we are headed to Olympin in Atlanta. So with all the Olympic collectors of pins and memorabilia. And that'll be a lot of fun.
It will. I'm very excited to see so many people. I have a pile of stuff to be packed.
As do I.
So it's going to be a fun weekend. Atlanta has so many Olympic fans. And of course, being a former host city, there's still Olympic stuff around. And hopefully we will get to see some of it here and there. So hopefully.
I have not been there before. So this will be a first for me.
So if you go, we are going to be at the Marriott Hotel in Buckhead, Marriott Atlanta Buckhead. And we will have a link to the show page in the show notes. We'd also like to say thank you to our patrons. This is the time of the year when we give a shout out to our gold and committee member level Patreon patrons who do so much to keep our flame alive. So we will be celebrating a patron every week. This week, we're celebrating Stanley Yang. Stanley has been a long time.
He's been with us many years. So thank you so much for all your support, Stanley.
It has been great. Stanley, we appreciate your ongoing support for years and years. And really, you don't know how much that means to us and for our ability to keep doing the show. So thank you very much. If you would like a shout out, check out flamealivepod.com/support to see how you can become a patron today. We have a good guest today.
This was fun.
This was really fun. We are talking with two-time Olympian and member of the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit, Staff Sergeant Sagen Maddalena. Sagen grew up in California. She went to college at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, where she competed in NCAA shooting. After college, she joined the Army and was assigned to the U.S. Army Marksmanship Unit and is on its international team as a shooter and instructor. Sagen competed at Tokyo 2020 in the women's 50-meter rifle three positions. We talked about that with Tim Sherry. And one of the biggest things with Tim Sherry was the revelation that his feet fell asleep when in the kneeling position, which got me, and we talked about that with Sagen as well. At Tokyo, Sagen placed 5th in that event, and then she also competed at Paris 2024 because she had the drive to keep going. She competed in 3 events, took 18th in the 10-meter air rifle mixed team, 4th in the women's 10-meter air rifle, and then she got silver in the women's 50-meter rifle 3 positions. So we talked with Sagen about her career in shooting and what the games were like in Chateauroux because we could not be there in person. Take a listen. Sagen, thank you so much for joining us. One of the things that is interesting to us about your role and how you got into shooting was that 4-H was elemental and fundamental to your introduction to the sport. We've got listeners who are really big into 4-H. So talk a little bit about how you got into the sport through that route.
Sure thing. So being young and homeschooled, I didn't necessarily have that opportunity to play sports. However, I was in 4-H with livestock and baking cakes, going to the fair every summer. And there was an opportunity to use 4-H to learn rifle marksmanship through a junior 22 program. And my parents allowed me to give it a go. I had to be a certain age. I think I was 13 or 14 years old before I was able to try that avenue in the 4-H program. And once I did, it just clicked. I really enjoyed it. Not only, the big thing is they taught the safety, like gun safety, how to handle a firearm, how to properly work through that style of equipment. and it's a vital thing, especially for, teenagers to know how to handle the firearms. But also what really got me was the competition aspect. I was finally able to compete with other kids my age, and even as a female, I was able to compete with the guys. And so it really helped kind of drive that competition mindset that I had. And, initially, I'm young, and it taught me things like keeping records, like journaling. It taught me through 4-H how to practice, and all that preparation work. Now looking back after being an Olympian, is how important that was at a young age, to learn those vital things as an athlete: preparation, practice, keeping records.
When did you realize that the Olympics was a possibility for you?
I realized the Olympics was a possibility right before I went to college. For me, myself, before, like, growing up, I heard about the Olympics. Sometimes we watched a little bit on TV. It wasn't necessarily a big thing in my family, besides, watching track and field and sometimes a little bit of swimming. But I had no idea about rifle sports or marksmanship at the time. So it wasn't just it was when I went to college that my coach at the time had mentioned the Olympic route, the possibilities of going to the Olympics in the sport that I was in. And so I learned it at a later date, and it didn't actually mentally hit that, oh, I can actually do this, until I was probably almost out of college. That's when I got the belief that, okay, I can go to the Olympics. But then the reality didn't set in until I was actually at the Olympics in 2021 in Tokyo of, hey, this is the real deal. This is what the Olympics were like. So I didn't have that big dream or spark until I was there at the village, if you can believe it. I mean, I guess I took a different route of getting to the Olympics.
But it's interesting that they weren't a thing really, like, in your family, and you'd watch them when they were on. What did they mean to you, just even in the abstract of the concept, without having the shooting element be real to you?
The Olympics, what it meant to me and what it still means to be, is a togetherness of bringing the whole world together, and the athletes and everyone of different shapes and sizes and mentalities, who are all striving for the best that they can be. And it's taking out the selfishness and becoming selfless. You're there with the whole world on one stage, and it's a humbling experience to be in that setting. And I know I kind of went off to being there at the time, but before that, it was the same type of thing that came to my attention, was that togetherness of the world being in one area competing at the same time.
Tokyo and France were very different,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. And even for you, shooting at Chateauroux, which was a ways from Paris, that was also a different experience from other Olympians. So how was Tokyo and France different for you?
Okay. Yeah. So Tokyo, one, being my first Olympics. You'll never have another first Olympics as an Olympian. As an Olympic athlete, you'll never have another first Olympic experience. And that really resonated with me. So it being during COVID, not having spectators, being kind of shut into one area, didn't really affect me in a negative way, because I was just thrilled to be there, just on that Olympic high of hey, I'm here, I'm at the highest point, in my career at the time. However, it didn't really set in of the Olympics until I was in Paris, in France, where you had the spectators, and you had that actual Olympic feel, and the crowd, the noise, the standing room only type of energy going through the building. It was completely different. It was like a 180-degree turn between both Tokyo and Paris. But they all were they were both unique. I mean, they were both 100% the Olympics, just in a different capacity.
Did you feel isolated out in Chateauroux, or did it feel integrated with other competitors, other sports?
So the isolation, if I would have set my mind on the fact that we were isolated, then yeah, I guess I could have had that feeling, but I didn't, because I was there just to work. I was there to do my job and do it to the best of my ability. So I didn't realize the separation. or at least I didn't allow myself to realize the separation, if that makes sense. It was, it definitely away from the other venues. I was not able to go see other sports. And we had several different villages with the athletes from different countries staying in those villages. So we weren't all tied to one area. So it had a feeling of almost a World Cup type feel when it came to the village area. Now, taking a look at the venue itself, so the sport venue and the range, that had 100% an Olympic feel. They had it set up. They had the spectator area, the seating area, the noise, the energy. There were plenty of spectators. It wasn't like, oh, we're in an isolated area, no one's going to show up. There were plenty of people showing up to watch the events. So the venue feel was definitely Olympic-like and didn't have that separate feel to it.
Was that then helpful in terms of getting the job done, that you didn't have a distraction of so many other athletes from different sports and all these other different things around you? You just had your venue and your particular village, and you could focus.
I would say it would be hard to answer that question truly, because I don't know how it would have been being around all the other sports. But I can say I prepared myself for that kind of that job mentality, that mindset going into it, to where, and it's not the fun, that's not a good word for it, but that Olympic, oh, we made it feel, that was going to happen after I was done competing. Leading up to it, at the games, it was all go time. It was all work. I didn't want to let my guard down with how hard I had prepared for the games. So, if looking into it, I would have still been able to focus and do my job, even with a different feel, with being around different athletes in different sports. I think I still could have kept that same mentality.
I'm curious a little bit about because you keep saying job, and it is, in fact, your job. You are in the military. What is helpful and what is not helpful about you're doing military training and then you're doing also athlete marksmanship training? I mean, because obviously shooting in those two situations are very, very different, even though the skills are still the same, but you've got to do some different kind of training.
Sure. So between being in the Army, a soldier in the Army, and an athlete in the Army, it's soldier first, athlete second. However, the fundamentals of marksmanship are still the same, and that is so vital as an athlete, is to embrace those fundamentals, not get fancy. That's why I like to tell a lot of the athletes I'm around, and even the soldiers, is, you start getting fancy and then you start getting comfortable. Like, stick with the fundamentals, train the fundamentals day in, day out, over and over and over again. You can never train them too much to be confident in those fundamentals. So it's the same in the setting of being a soldier in the Army, is you have to be very good at and proficient at your job. And so they commingle. I mean, they go together, being an athlete and also being a soldier. It helps keep me on task. It helps with my discipline, not taking days off where I don't need to take those days off. Being in the military, it really pushes you to be all that you can be, which helps on the athletic side too. And also with the unit that I am in, the United States Army Marksmanship Unit, call it the AMU in short, it's specifically my job profile is to be an instructor and also a shooter. So training and preparing myself for these competitions, I'm allowed a lot of preparation time for that. It's not like I'm juggling two things at the same time. It is my job to be that top level athlete and be that ambassador for the Army in that sense.
Do you ever have to worry about turning off your soldier brain when you're in an event like the Olympics, which obviously has an incredible security aspect to it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, you're always aware of your surroundings. That's the best way I can put it. Is just you're just always aware of your surroundings and have that trust and security that's around you in those venues. And there were great volunteers there, and security guards, and the whole place didn't have that feel of it wasn't chaos. It was very well put together. That's as much as I could say with that question.
Because you talked about the mental aspect, what are some of the techniques you use to keep mentally sharp, especially because shooting is such a mental sport, and it takes a lot of strength and stamina, both physically and mentally, to be good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the mental side, that is years and years and years of training, the mental stamina, the confidence, visualization, the scenarios in your head, learning to work with doubts. There's just so much training that is not seen on the outside that is vital to a performance on that stage. Because now the technical part and the fundamentals of shooting a good shot and shooting a well-performed match is also vital. But the mental strength to allow your body to perform, that's the key there, is allowing that training to take place through the mental preparation. I was nervous. I'm not going to lie. I was totally human the entire time, especially the day of and the day before leading up to competitions. But with the training and the preparation, I was able to work through those nerves and use them to help focus. And I mean, this is true. I've told everyone this that'll listen. I mean, the nerves really came out afterwards. And that's when I got sick to my stomach, and it was after all the competition was done and the medals were given out, because you were just, all of a sudden, all of that was just let loose, right? And you were able to take a step back and come out of competition mode after it felt like 4 years of just go, go, go. But yeah, that mental piece is so strong, and I could talk about that all day.
How has that processing of all that after effect been over the past couple months?
The process of coming down off of the Olympics has been a struggle, a new one that I've never had before. Tokyo was different. I achieved my goal in Tokyo, and actually that's when the flame was lit inside of me to go back to the Olympics. Like I was saying earlier about having that Olympic drive, didn't start until I was at the Olympics. Even though I knew of the Olympics beforehand, that fire wasn't lit in my belly until I was there at the games in 2021. So then going into France and preparing in such a different way for France than I had for Paris, just in experience and in confidence, that coming off of the games in France it's been a learning curve, and I'm not out of it yet. Still trying to reevaluate my purpose as an athlete and my purpose as a soldier, and just have that why and that drive. It's there. I just have to find how, because it's going to continue to mold and evolve as I get older and more experienced as an athlete. It does for everybody. That drive does. And so that's what I'm going through now in my post-Olympic stage.
What were your expectations going into Paris?
Okay. My expectations going into Paris, my goal was to medal in both the air rifle and the small bore event. Realistically, my ability in air rifle was, yeah, I could make a final, but looking at past results, I hadn't been a medalist in many air rifle events. So just looking at legit facts, making the final at the Olympics was a huge achievement for me. And I think I could have, don't know because it already happened. But if my mindset had been just a little tweaked, a little different to a point where, yeah, I can take bronze, silver, gold, and air rifle, I might have been able to get past that fourth place finish and been up in the medalist. I mean, even coming in fourth in air rifle, it's a huge achievement. Not putting myself down on that at all. And it was really close to being in the medals. I definitely have a strong drive for LA to that mindset to be, not just medalist, but at the top of the podium kind of mindset. I have to stay realistic. It's a very tough sport. There's a lot of great athletes out there, and we're talking about just less than millimeter differences in scores. But then also to go on with your question on expectations for small bore in 22, that was in that event, that one I had more of the experience. And so with that experience came a little bit more confidence. And it's like I knew, not in a cocky way, I just knew my ability that I could make that final and I could perform at my very best and medal in that final. It was still, I mean, just a huge surprise and achievement to medal, but I had that expectation in my head before, I mean, years before I went.
Put a pin in the air rifle because I do want to talk about the small bore.
Yeah.
Because you had to do a shoot off to get into the final two. What goes through your mind when you realize you have a shoot off going on? Plus, you have a crowd and an announcer hyping everything up.
Yeah. Next shot. That was was going. Those were the words in my head. Next shot. Just do your job. Next shot. And that just put me in the moment. And that's an important thing as an athlete, is you have to, wherever you are, be all there type mentality. And that was what I did. Is I just knew I had to perform well, shoot a good shot, and control what I could control. And that was just myself, not the other athlete.
I also have a small 3-position question. We
Go
talked
for it.
with Tim Sherry ahead of Tokyo. Do your feet fall asleep when you kneel?
If I haven't trained it for a little bit, yes. But it's an endurance thing. So I still have feeling in my feet, especially after just a 20 shot. So the match format that we did in France, there was no tingling in the feet. But I've definitely experienced it plenty of times in training. Not a fun time.
No, that's what we thought when we heard when he told us that. It was like, oh, that's got to be hard to work with sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
How was it balancing 3 events in Paris first? Because you only had the one in Tokyo, but now we're rounding out our card a little bit.
Yeah. So in Tokyo, priority was the 50-meter rifle, so the 22. However, so that was my priority, but I still balanced air rifle in my training just to make sure I wasn't hammering one event over and over and over again. I needed to be well-rounded leading up to the Tokyo Games. The difference with France in Paris was the priority of air rifle was higher than it was in Tokyo. And so I was still training small bore just as religiously and just as intense. But then I added in that air rifle training and had to balance the two to where, I have a routine. I can't go into it too much or we'd be here all day. But there is a routine that I follow that allows the time in both guns to work pretty well. So I can train them both throughout the week and be prepared. And, the one thing, I think I said it earlier, but it's important, especially with 2 events, is when you're training that one event, I am training that one event. Wherever I am, be all there type mentality. That way I don't muddle the waters between the 2 guns, and that would take away some of that training value.
Back to the air rifle in Paris, getting into the final, you mentioned a little bit about, I don't want to call it a mental blip, but what are you telling yourself versus what is yourself trying to tell you in order for you to get to what you want to achieve? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. What do I tell myself versus what's going on in my mind versus what I'm controlling in my mind?
Right, right.
In France and air rifle, what I was controlling in my mind was do the process, do the work, stick to the routine, and trust your hold. I was trained up as well as I could be leading up to that match. And really it was just, I didn't have I did not have to perform spectacular. I did not have to shoot a world record or an Olympic record. All I had to do was perform as I had throughout the year. And that's what I did. And it really, it was like I literally put everything on the table that day. I didn't do any extra because I couldn't. I didn't do anything less because I was disciplined enough to follow my process. And I ran through that match just smooth. It went smooth as butter. Now, it did not feel smooth as butter. On the outside, it looked fine. On the inside was a literal firecracker show going on with heartbeat and nerves and shakes. But the discipline of still shooting a good shot, even though I was on edge, that just attests to the preparation and the training leading up. And I finished that competition. I had about 15 minutes to spare. You get an hour and 15 minutes, so 75 minutes. to shoot your 60 record shots. And I went through pretty smooth. It was about a minute a shot, finished with 15 minutes left, and I think I was in 10th place when I got off the line. Now, the objective, the actual score was, just a touch lower than what I had been doing in training, but it was right where it needed to be. When I mean touch, I mean you're talking like tenths, right? And so at that point it was, well, now it's the waiting game to see what everyone else does. And I kept my score it stayed the same, but on the scoreboard was jumping between like 6th and 12th and 15th and 10th and 8th. And they take the top 8 for the final. And talk about just a nervous wreck, just sitting there waiting for them to say stop. And like, did I make it? Did I make it? Did I make it? And that was probably the most exciting part of air rifle, was the waiting game to see if I made the final. And when I did, man, I had a coach come up and we just were like yelling, like, yeah, we made it. And then it was prep time for the final, so I had to get serious again. But
How much do you get to enjoy that before you have to switch? How does that timing work?
Okay. So with the Olympic Games, I had a night pretty much. So our Olympic qualification was on one day, and the very next morning was the Olympic finals. So that's where the medals were taking place. The qualification shortened the field from all of the countries down to the top 8 shooters. And then those top 8 shooters came in the next day for the final to figure out who was 1, 2, and 3. And so what I ended up doing was I allowed not very much time of, made the final, to, okay, let's get in mindset, need to have a good meal, good night's sleep, stick to the routine so I'm ready for the next day. It's like work's not done. We still got a final. And then shot that air rifle final and came up a little bit short. And that was a weird set of emotions because came up a little short, was proud of my performance, proud of how I did. I was a little bit evaluating in my head what I could have done better, but I knew it was over. So I didn't need to evaluate it too much at the time. And then went through all of the reporters, and one of them brought up the fact that, oh, you're so close to making a medal, and how does it feel to, the U.S. hasn't earned a medal yet? And I was like, okay, well, just wait till small bore, buddy. I guess that doesn't really answer your question. I had more of a energy release after small bore than I did after air rifle. And I think because once small bore was done, all of my events were done. And that's when I was finally able to just take a step back and be like, all right, my quad is over,
And that's a nice way to end your quad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
What is that like, suddenly balancing a bunch of reporters where there's not usually a ton of focus on shooting sports?
I just tried to stay honest and true to them, answer their questions as best as I could, joke around with them a little bit because I get pretty introverted when people are talking to me, so I awkwardly make jokes. On the outside, it looked like a lot of reporters, but really I would talk with 2 or 3. That was about it. Wasn't too overwhelming.
How were the facilities? Because that's the National Shooting Center. Had you shot there before?
That was my first time in Chateauroux. The facilities were great, well maintained. The ranges were world class, especially the target systems, the volunteers. It's just a great setup. It was a little bit warm on a couple days. The AC maybe not so great, but hey, it was France. Can't really complain. And also, I train in Columbus, Georgia, all the time. So actually, it was not hot at all compared to home. So yeah, overall, great facilities in the town around the venue. So Chateauroux itself, we're very inviting for all the athletes, all the restaurants and the stores. You knew the Olympics were going on.
Were you aware of how shooting was going viral around the world with different shooters?
Yeah. In the end, people mentioned it, and I got a good chuckle out of it. That's about all I can say. Yeah.
Well, no, because I mean, seriously, it's funny that people go, oh, wow, look at this. I've never seen this before. And then if you if you watch a little bit of shooting, everyone looks badass. Come on.
Yeah, yeah,
Because they're
yeah.
all so focused and they all have that drive. You see it in your eyes. It's just that drive and determination. And you may not know how you look on the outside, but it it's really it's cool.
Okay, okay, yeah.
And intimidating.
Yes, in a good
Yeah,
way.
I've been told that before.
I mean, you see somebody standing there with a weapon who knows how to use it. That's a little intimidating.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy though with all of us. It's like, oh, it's just a sport, and we were all raised being safe practices and care for your equipment, and that's it. For us, it's our sport. We don't think about it as handling weapons or it being any safety concern, because we're also vigilant with the practice of it and with the handling of our equipment. And also, you've got great volunteers and range officers who keep an eye out, because I mean, it is sport mode, and you get pretty focused. So you have people on the outside just watching and maintaining. But yeah, for me, it's just a sport.
When you were done, did you get to enjoy French food at all? Because that was one of the things you were looking forward to.
Okay, I did get one day, and it was before it all started. We were set up in Chateauroux about a week and a half before the events started, week and a half. And so during that time, I got good training in, but I also made a point of getting away from the venue and getting away from the village, going for a walk, stretching my legs, and being around the community itself, being around the locals, because that's something I enjoy doing is kind of immersing myself with the locals. And I found two things. One day I was like, oh, I'm going to go for a jog. And then I ended up stopping at this sweet shop or pedophore shop. And that was a bad idea, because I ended up walking back, because I was like eating eclairs and all that. I was like, this is so good. And then I got done. I'm like, I am 1.5 miles and I am not jogging back. So that was the first experience. And the second one is I got to about downtown, and I was just looking around. I wasn't necessarily looking through Google Maps or anything. I just like to poke your head in the window and see what they got. And I found this cat cafe. And this lady had these cats running around, and she served tea and coffee and everything. I went back like 3 times. It was my favorite place. I went in and got my cat fix and would lay down on the floor, play with the cats, and then go back to the village. So, yeah.
That sounds like lovely work-life balance.
It is. It is. One of the days I was missing my own cats and my dog back home, and I went over there and I'm like, keep it together, just hang out with the cats.
Well, Jill will tell you, everywhere we went in Paris, I was like, people won't let me pet their dogs. I need to play with some dogs. It's the worst being away from your babies, right?
Yeah, it is. It is.
What are some cool things you've gotten to do since you got back?
So since I got back, one, I've been able to take some time off, and that's pretty cool for me. I am a obsessive trainer and preparer, so being able to take some time off has been a good test of my patience. So there's that, but also getting home, I was able to see my family. I found out I hadn't seen my parents in 3 years, or been home in 3 years, so got to go back home and see my family, the people I grew up with. They hosted a great parade, and I got to spend some time with the community, talking with the kids and the schools. And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about being an Olympic athlete from a small town, is I can go back and I can show to these kids that, hey, you don't have to be an Olympic athlete, but if you have something you want to do or become, it's totally possible. Just because you're from a small town doesn't mean small opportunities. Like, there's ways to get out and spread your wings. And, I'm an example of that type of talk. And so I do enjoy being able to do that and spread knowledge to those kids who might not know about those opportunities that they have. So doing that, I got to do that back in California, and just taking some time off here at home on the East Coast, getting some fishing in, catching up on yard work, the stuff you don't think about when you're so obsessed in the sport.
So if you are a preparer, did you prepare to take time off?
I did prepare to take time off. I knew that I was going to put what I would say the guns up. I wasn't going to train I knew that was going to happen, and for a little bit of time, several months, it's turning out to be all start up again. Looking at next March is when it's going to be go time. So, but I did prepare for it. I did plan for it, and I knew I would not be shooting some of these kind of important national matches coming up in the next couple months. So I'll be a spectator. It'll be different.
Was that thinking in terms of needing a physical break, a mental break, or both?
It was a mental break. Definitely needed that mental break. It's been if you think about it, a 7-year push, because we had Tokyo and then it was 3 years to Paris. We didn't have that break year. And so it was that 7-year push. And I knew I was going to need some time before I made another 4-year push for LA.
I keep saying this to people we're talking to. You're not a woman who sounds like she's retiring. You sound like LA is where we're going. What does that look like in terms of you're taking this break, but getting back into it and having to think of that again?
Yeah, it's for me it's important to remember the why. So the reason that I'm an athlete, the reason I'm pushing for the Olympics, so that I have that foundation to build off of in the years leading up to 2028. And that is a very important thing that I'm prioritizing at this moment instead of training. Because if you think about it, if you do something mindlessly without that drive and desire, you can be good at it, but it's really hard to be great. And so that's why I'm taking this time to remind myself why I'm here, why I'm doing this. It's not like I don't have a purpose or a reason, like I do, but it's strengthening that over these next couple of months.
And hanging out with the cats and dog.
Yes, absolutely. Of course.
Talk with us a little bit about your role with the U.S. marksmanship team and separating out kind of competition from teaching and what you do as an instructor.
Okay. Yeah. So with my instructor role, there are several places the instructor role fits in the Army Marksmanship Unit for myself. It is one, being a coach and a mentor to the team around me. And that's a hard thing because I'm also an athlete and a competitor, and they are my competitors. But I know that if I make them better, it's only going to make me better. And I'm going to need that push just as much as they might need it. My biggest thing is I really don't want to mess them up. Like, I want to teach them as best as I can and try and give them the knowledge that I've gained over the years as best as I can. And that's what I'm doing these next couple months. Instead of training myself, training those around me to progress their ability. And then outside of our unit, there's teaching basic marksmanship skills to other soldiers in their units within the Army so that they're prepared for whatever they might see in their job. And then there's also helping out with schools, ROTC, different junior teams, because it's a national sport. I mean, it's in the community. Schools still have air rifle programs, and there's small teams with 22 programs, and that's something that the AMU will do. We'll send out some of our soldiers to go down and teach them how to be a competitor, some of the basic rifle marksmanship fundamentals in sport to help progress those schools and those athletes as well.
This just popped into my head. Are you allowed to, for events and things, wear your medal and your uniform?
I'm not one to wear the medal very much. In fact, people have to tell me to wear it when we're doing the media stuff. I'm like, God, do I have to wear it? It's heavy. But as for the uniform, it really depends on the event. So if it's a marketing event or an event where we're helping recruiters out and we really want to show that the strength of the Army and the opportunities that it provides, then I will wear the uniform, whether that's fatigues or something in those lines. And then there's also some times where I use or wear the Olympic uniform, or an Olympic uniform in a way, like a sense, like the polo or the medal outfit or the media outfit. It really just depends on what's going to grab the attention of the audience the best and what the mission is for that day, whether it's really looking at recruiting or whether it's progressing those juniors in their path to kind of their type of Olympics.
Because I'm thinking, wait, the medal would be not in uniform, because that would be like extra jewelry. But it's an Olympic medal, for goodness sakes. Is that an exception made for that?
Hey, if I'm told to, I'll wear it, but we'll just go with that.
Okay, what is heavier, the medal or your shooting jacket?
The jacket.
I have a question. When you're working with kids at the high school and the junior ROTC level, and I'm trying to remember how I thought about this initially. Understanding mentally what they're capable of because they're young, and you know how
Mm.
as you progress, just having maturity you do is different from what they have, and understanding where their levels are at and what they're capable of understanding and capable of doing at a given age.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's allowing them to see somebody that they can look up to, whether that's myself, my teammates who are out coaching with me or instructing. That's very important to myself, of being something that the juniors can look up to in professionalism, in our performance, in our competitive edge, in our sportsmanship, how we communicate with others. And that's what I remember as a kid, is looking up to people like that. And so I'm just trying to remember what it was like when I was younger and how I saw someone. And I learned better from the people I looked up to than I did from someone who was just out, just saying, hey, do this, say this, but do what I say, don't do what I do type of mentality or teaching.
How has age helped you as an Olympian from one Olympics to the next?
Well, I get sore a lot faster. Talk about age. I am old for my sport. I'm not going to lie. There are a lot of teenagers who aren't even legal drinking age who are out there kicking butt. Good for them, man. Like, I think for the younger generation, they don't have that expectation of, I'm supposed to shoot this. They don't know the scores they're supposed to shoot. They just shoot as good as they can, and that works pretty well for them. The more mature that I've become and the more experience I've had, the more I have to remind myself the way I shoot one day doesn't dictate the score the next day. I still have to do the process. I still have to have that non-judgmental way of shooting, that young kid mindset in a mature adult body. If that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. I guess the biggest thing is the older you get, the more you can get in your own way. And I'm trying to reduce that as much as possible on the mental side. On the physical side, yeah, a lot more ice baths and massage sessions and curling up in the fetal position because your back hurts stages than when you're younger.
Sorry.
I can relate.
Yes.
Olympic athletes, they're just like us.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't go to opening ceremonies up in Paris, and you didn't go to closing ceremonies either?
Yeah, I did not.
Okay. Did they do anything special for you, or did you dress up in your opening ceremonies uniform at all?
They didn't even give me an opening or closing ceremony uniform.
What?
So, yeah, I think it was a little miss up, but that's all right. I have way too much stuff in my closet, so I'm not hating.
I am.
Oh.
Right?
I'm
Ralph
upset
Lauren.
for you. Wait a second.
You're how many how many NASCAR looks do you have in your closet? Really?
Too many, but they're all kind of in these vacuum sealed bags, so I never get them out. But
did they do anything special for you? Did you all get together and watch it? Were you just focused on your competition?
For the opening ceremony, those of us who were at the village that night, we got together. Our team leader set up a TV. We had a couple ladies from the main village, from the main hub, come up, took the train up. They brought us we had a nice little rug and some bean bags, and we sat back in our boarding school classroom and watched the boat go down the river. And then what was great was about 8:00, I could be like, all right, time for bed. See y'all. And so I bounced out pretty quick. As for closing ceremonies, I had the option to stay. They gave me the option. Even after I said, no, I'm going to go home early, I still had the option to stay. But I made the choice to go home because I knew how exhausted I was and would be after I was done competing. And the best place to recover would be at home. So that's why I chose to get back to the States instead of staying for the closing ceremonies. And as for the clothes and stuff, like they did make a very big effort to try and get everyone the correct stuff, the right sizes and all the gear. It's just hard when you're at a venue 3 hours away from the main hub and you're not even going through the main village. It's just hard to do. And so they did a great job mitigating that as best as possible.
So you didn't get to go through the normal processing for Team
No.
USA.
I did not, no.
Yeah.
Did you get to do that in Tokyo?
Because of COVID, no. We had they brought the suitcases were in the room waiting for us when we got there, which was like Christmas to me. I was like, oh my goodness, look at all this stuff.
What is this? What is this?
Yeah.
Did you get to eat the chocolate muffin?
No, I did not. I did not on purpose, though. I wasn't feeling it the day I did go to the main village. I had 2 days there. It was the day after the Olympic final finished up. That very next day, we got in a van at like 6 a.m. and drove down to Paris and got connected with NBC. And we did the whole media day with NBC and getting pictures of the medal and interviews. Then got shipped to the athlete house, USA athlete house. That was pretty cool, pretty legit. Did the night there. By the time I got to my room, it was pretty late. I just passed out, and the next day I just sat in bed and just watched Netflix. I was so drained after that, and went to the food hall a couple times, but I was not in a adventurous mood.
How surreal is it to go through the NBC interview experience?
Ooh, it was pretty darn surreal. Being in the green room and getting your hair done. And they're like, hey, you want to put makeup on? I'm like, does it look like I wear makeup? No, but do my hair. And anyways, no, it was great. And hanging out with the ladies there and the people behind the scene. That was the cool part for me. And then going through the interview process and just being like, okay, how many bloopers do I get? Because I'm going to need them. Like, is this live or is this recorded? But no, it was great. It was a great time. It was exhausting, I'm not going to lie, especially for myself. But it was a great time.
Well, Sagen, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. We were sad to not be able to get to go to shooting because we were there and just it was such a haul for us. And so hopefully for LA, we will be able to get a closer venue.
Yeah, come check it out.
It's a cool sport.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's like watching paint dry, but in a really different capacity.
Wait, I'm sorry. What kind of capacity are we talking about?
Well, you've got guns and firearms and targets, but it's just really slow and methodical. So it's not like you're watching these bikes go by in a blur,
So you're saying bring the knitting.
Actually, no, that's not a bad idea.
I was going to say, I would think the noise would be just the click, click, click.
We wouldn't hear it. You're good.
Hear it.
All right. Excellent.
We got our earplugs stuffed into our brains.
That's right.
So.
That's right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on your show and just to be able to share my story and how I've come up through 4-H and through the Army and been able to achieve some dreams. It's been a great ride. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Sagen. You can follow Sagen on Instagram at Sagen Maddalena, and you can find out more about the U.S. Army's Marksmanship Unit at goarmy.com/army-marksmanship.unit. They are at GoArmy on social. Thank you so much to them for reaching out and connecting us with Sagen. We've worked with the U.S. World Class Athlete Program before, and it's a lot of fun to learn about the programs that the Armed Forces has. Because we hear about it in other countries, but you often forget that we have soldiers of our own. Yep. And we have several soldiers and former soldiers on SSG.
Buongiorno.
I'm now paying attention to what your face and your gestures are like for Italy.
I'm now paying attention to what I do with my face. And my gestures when I speak Italian.
Now, if you haven't seen it, we put a little video from last week's show up in our Facebook group to show you how I think it's adorable. How you get into the foreign languages we try to learn in order to be good hosts in other countries.
I wonder if I made the French face the whole time I was in Paris trying to speak French, which is why they all looked at me strangely.
Don't know. Anyway, news from Milan-Cortina 2026. The daily competition schedule for the Olympics is out. This is version 6, so be on the lookout. It is subject to change. We will have a link to that in the show notes. It's kind of cool because they break out the sports by zones. There are 4 zones, like the Milano zone and the different mountain zones and Cortina zone. If you'd like to plan your trip or viewing around medals, opening weekend is going to have 13 medal events. The midweek of opening week will have 38. Middle weekend is going to have 32. The midweek of the last week will have 34, and the final weekend will have 14 medal events. So it's pretty evenly spaced.
That's a lot of medal events.
It is. It really is.
I mean, I realize, with skiing, you'll have men and women, you have different, and with speed skating, you have all the different distances, but still, that feels like a lot for Winter Olympics.
I know. They're big. They're getting big. It's getting more real every minute.
Welcome to TKFLASTAN.
Now is the time of the show where we talk with our team Keep the Flame Alive. These are past guests and listeners of the show who have become citizens of our very own country, TKFLASTAN.
Daniel Romanchuk won the men's wheelchair division of the New York City Marathon.
John Shuster and his team won bronze at the Pan-Continental Curling Championships.
Steve Emt is competing with Team USA at the Wheelchair Curling World B Championships in Lohja, Finland this week. The team currently are atop the round robin standings at 7-1.
Whoa, go Steve. And Kat Holmes has been elected as the fencing representative on the Team USA Athletes Commission. That's going to do it for this episode. Let us know what you think of the U.S. Army Marksmanship Program and our interview with Steph.
We love hearing from you. You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. And the voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT.
Next week, we will be back with more news and stories from the Olympics and Paralympics. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, keep the flame alive.